Hi, I'm Robin Miller. I am host of Miller Chat. We are now doing and continuing doing a Zoom show until this dreadful pandemic disappears in thin air, hopefully very soon. But we are grateful to Shrewsbury Media Connection for allowing us to do this show virtually. So my show today is with Paul M. Piwko, Professor of Practice, Assumption University, and Alexandra P. Orlandi, psychology major, Assumption University, and they are both co-developers of the Museum of the Mental Health Project. Right? Did I get that correct for both of you?
Correct.
Okay. Good.
Correct.
Okay. Well, welcome on my show. Thank you very much for coming on. I know we've talked about this for the last few months, and I appreciate the opportunity to come on through virtually. So let's talk a little bit about what the current work that you're doing on the National Museum of Mental Health Project. Can you guys tell us a little bit about what it is, what you're doing, what you're currently doing?
Sure. I guess at its simplest, Robin, we want to form a National Museum of Mental Health.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much everything that we're going to talk about, from now on, relates to that kind of simple statement. We believe and have seen mental health exhibitions on display in museums and sometimes in public locations that have really powerful effects. And we formed the National Museum of Mental Health Project after doing a bunch of research and literally formed it with that goal in mind, right? Forming and developing a National Museum of Mental Health. Now, it's hard to say that with a straight face, right? And to not recognize that for that vision one day to come into full existence, it requires collaboration and partnership. And so a big part of our organization and what we're trying to accomplish relates to finding collaborators and partners, working with other nonprofits who can together help make this vision come to life.
Oh, wow. That sounds exciting.
Starts with two people, but we need to expand.
Uh-huh. And Alexandra, what role do you play in this too?
So the way it started is that Paul came up with this idea, and I was in the honors program and I applied for an honors fellowship. But the reason that started is because he brought his idea to my work study boss, who then suggested me as a student to do the honors fellowship with. And so we applied and we got it. So then we did an honors fellowship between my junior year and senior year of college. So at first it was just like a student-professor relationship, and then it just kind of developed as the project developed, and now it's transformed from like research to a nonprofit, and technically we have roles in it. I'm the technical president, but I see it more as like a, equal teamwork. I always see it that way, and I think Paula always sees it that way. So in simple, that was the development of my role.
I see Alex as the real brains behind the operation, who can figure out what is actually a good idea. One thing that I think is really worth saying is, that's such a big long-term goal that when you stand in front of something like that, it's kind of humbling, but it's also inspiring as we try to figure out what are practical and tangible steps that can help move things in that direction. And a big part of what we've been doing for, 3 years now, has been trying to figure out those practical and tangible steps. And as Alex said, just last year, we formed the National Museum of Mental Health Project as a nonprofit, as one step. But even before we did that, we had taken another step, which is we created our website. Our website is there to help accelerate a trend that has been in development nationally that we did not start, but we may have been the first to identify as a trend. And this trend is the use of mental health exhibitions, not just to try to knock down stigma about mental health and mental illness, but literally to educate and create mental health literacy. And so we created this website roughly 2 years ago now, right, Alex? And on the website, our goal for the website was for it to be a clearinghouse that contained information about the different mental health exhibitions that are in existence around the country, as a way of those exhibitions being shared. And so early on, that was our initial focus of the National Museum of Mental Health project, just trying to promote, if you will, and help people promote exhibitions and help people know that mental health exhibitions are a thing, right?
Yes.
And that there are really good ones out there that have already been created that can be shared.
Well, yes, you shared. Yeah, you shared some. I know you shared some of us with us to show during the show. We got that. They're really neat exhibits.
Yeah, and I think we're going to talk about our research and some of those other exhibitions later in the program, right? But Alex, when you think about National Museum of Mental Health project, what else? What else we have going on?
What else do we have going on? I like to jump right into the research part of it, but are you leaning more towards like what we're doing with I Get It, or would you like to?
Oh, absolutely. That's where I'm leaning.
Okay. Okay. So right now we're focusing on actually creating an exhibit called I Get It. And it's not your typical physical space exhibit. It is an online social media exhibit, or right now we're focusing on like the social media aspect. But the reason for that is because COVID kicked in. So we actually weren't really planning on this. We were more so thinking like continuing the National Museum of Mental Health project, like more of like the research aspect and like Paul said, like a clearinghouse for the exhibits. But then people were just like, hey, you should make your own exhibit. You should make your own exhibit. And then COVID kicked in and we're like, we can make an online exhibit. Like, why not? We have the resources to do so. And so with the research that we, found from the creating the National Museum of Mental Health project, nonprofit, we basically took the concrete step, I like to call it, to create the exhibit. So it's kind of like our step of action, I'd like to say. And I would like to read the I Get It vision, just because we worded it so well, like this one way we wrote it, that I would hate to waste not reading it. So I just want to read this little snippet about it. So the I Get It vision is that our mental health is a mosaic of realizations, experiences, skills, perspectives, treatments, and DNA, with the pieces held together by the fractures and open space between. And I Get It is a public art exhibition for exploring this mosaic. Leave a piece, take a piece, and build better mental health. And I think the reason why we like this so much is because I think it's a great metaphor as to what we're trying to do with this mental health mosaic.
Oh, pretty cool.
Yeah.
So we
Paul, do you want to add?
Yeah. So if you were to stop, Robbin, and ask yourself, what are the things you do to keep yourself well mentally? This is what we're asking people to do, and share their answers. What is it that you've realized, maybe through experience, helps you be well and you need to do to be well? So for me, for example, one very tangible example is within the last year, I've created a self-care checklist.
Sure.
And I have about 15 different items on it. And I have a goal every day to check off 3 or 4 of them, because each of these things are hugely important in terms of my own ability to maintain my motivation and to be well. And some of them may include things like exercise. Others may include things like reading. But that works for me. That's one piece of my mental health mosaic. And what we're trying to do with I Get It is create an exhibition that allows people, maybe someone who's watching this show right now,
Sure.
to make a contribution into the mosaic, explaining something about their mental health that helps them be well. And we have a series of prompts that are a part of our call for submissions that people can respond to. And we, as Alex said, our first step is to create an oral history exhibition, which literally will take the form of a social media campaign. And then ultimately, I Get It will be opened up to a wide variety of artistic contributions. These could be songs, these could be pieces of digital art, but all within this same theme, right? This same mosaic of I Get It realizations.
Yeah. And also jumping back to like the title itself of I Get It, it is what it says. So like someone experiencing some mental health struggle, you know, they get it. They understand that what it feels like to go through something, for example, like depression, anxiety. They understand that feeling. And I feel like it's hard to understand if you haven't actually experienced it. But I think someone who actually has gone through something like that, they really get it. And I think we have such a passion for mental health, and we have I Get It in certain ways that we thought this would be a great title for it.
Yes. So I think, Robbin, by the end of the show, you'll be sharing our email. And, you know, if there's anyone who individually has an I Get It realization that they'd like to contribute to the exhibition, we'd love to hear from them. Equally, if there are other organizations out there, they could be arts-based organizations, they could be mental health advocacy organizations. Again, a big part of what we're trying to do is work through collaboration and partnership. Even in the nonprofit community, there can be a kind of competition that can exist, right? This is our turf that we're working on. And one of the things Alex and I have done, and this makes no sense from a business standpoint, is we formed a nonprofit that is based upon essentially volunteer labor, volunteer and intern labor. And literally our bylaws codify into our bylaws that we have a bias toward being a volunteer organization. So none of us are being paid anything. Everyone that has been involved, and you will be seeing some of the pictures of our wonderful and brilliant interns, as well as one particular volunteer who have been so instrumental in making this project happen. Everyone is being motivated by just a shared passion and shared goals. There's no money in it for any of us at this stage. And that's not, that's part of how we can keep the project pure. And ultimately, obviously, if we get further along toward a National Museum of Mental Health taking shape, which, by the way, we have a plan for. We literally have 50 to 100 pages worth of plans for how this can happen. Then, of course, at some point, more resources would be needed.
Well, I think the pandemic helps a little bit because a lot of people have had to learn how to cope and basically to see what they have done as well. Right? We all need positive role models and positive experiences from the pandemic and post-pandemic. So I think that would be quite interesting. I was reading how scientists are thinking of a new diagnosis for the pandemic, a condition in the Diagnostic Standard Manual 5. And I'm like, why do they need it? But that's up and coming.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what comes up from that.
You know, I think, Robbin, when we look at the next 10 years, we're filled with hope. You know, if you think of this particular moment in time, no doubt there has been, you know, a tremendous amount of suffering associated with COVID. Historically, there has been a tremendous amount of suffering with respect to mental health. And we're at this wonderful moment, right, in the history of mankind where suddenly there's now the possibility of hope existing alongside the suffering, right? The suffering is not going to go away. It's with us.
Right.
And the question is, how do we respond to it? And is there hope? And is there some tangible basis for hope? And we feel, mental health exhibitions are a tangible basis. There's something very tangible that provide real hope.
Yeah.
Should we talk a bit about those exhibitions and some
It
of our
definitely
research?
does. Definitely does. Sure. Go ahead. I'll be happy to hear it. Go ahead.
Oh, do you want to start and then I can add?
Sure. So we would be remiss not to start with the biggest single investment into a mental health exhibition in the United States. This exhibition is called Mental Health Mind Matters. It was developed by the Science Museum of Minnesota. It was adapted to the US by the Science Museum of Minnesota. It was originally developed in Finland, and it is about a $500,000 investment, a 5,000 square foot exhibition, and it has traveled from city to city, and currently it's in Richmond, Virginia. Initially, it was in St. Paul because it was developed by the Science Museum of Minnesota. That's kind of the business side of it. Alex, do you want to talk about the exhibition and some of what makes it special?
Yeah, so I would like to go straight into these terms that I've coined. So I've coined the terms, or at least I think so, identity formation and empathy formation. And I think this is really apparent to see throughout the exhibits that we've researched. But the way I define identity formation is, let's say, for example, say I have depression and I go into an exhibit and there's something related about depression. I can feel that I'm not alone, and I could even learn more about it, and as a form of treatment. And empathy formation is, let's say I don't have depression, but same exhibit, I can learn about that depression and then use that information to help loved ones, or even just get a better understanding. And I honestly believe that if you have a better understanding of mental health, you can help society better as a whole. So it doesn't even have to be loved ones, but if you experience anything like out there with mental health, you have that information. So going into the Mental Health Mind Matters exhibit, something that I like to talk about in terms of identity and empathy formation is there's this part that talks about anorexia. And with anorexia, which I've personally experienced several years ago, but you go into this little booth and there's a mirror in front of you. And then on your left, there's this button. So you can kind of what do you call it?
Dial.
A dial. Yeah. You can turn the dial one way or the other, and it creates a different curve on the mirror. And so one way the curve, it makes you look skinnier, and then the other way the curve makes you look a little bit larger. And you try to dial it to where you think what you look like. And then once you put it there, once you've kept it there, you press the button and it goes back to its original straightness. So it's not curved at this point. So you see what you thought of yourself versus what you actually look like. And someone with anorexia sees phantom fat is what it's called. And basically they see themselves as a lot larger than they actually are. And that's part of what feeds into them feeling like they need to keep getting losing weight. So that's kind of I thought that's really cool because it's really hands-on, and it's like a simulation to figure out what anorexia is like. And on going back to identity and empathy formation, someone with identity formation, say they experience anorexia, they're learning about themselves in that very moment. And then someone who hasn't experienced it or isn't experiencing it, they can get a general understanding. That person sees themselves as larger than they actually are. They actually see themselves that way. Like they're not making it up when they say, yeah, I think I'm like fat or think I'm too big or, you know, and that feeds into like eating less, working out to an unhealthy point. So I love that part of the exhibit. I mean, love all parts of the exhibit, but that's just something that really stuck with me just because I've experienced it in the past and an example I love to tell.
And I think if I'm remembering correctly, something like 90% of the people, when you press the button and it corrects to the actual reflection of you, something like 90% of the people put more pounds on themselves when they're adjusting the dial. And so, you know, while I've never experienced anorexia, certainly in that moment, I could sense and I could see that even my own mental pattern was causing that same result.
Oh, interesting. Sounds exciting to do, to help educate. Wow. And what else is there too? I'm excited. What else do you have in the research?
So there are other exhibitions as well, Robbin. Maybe some of your viewers have walked by them or stopped and looked at them. And some of them are in public locations. There are two of them at Logan Airport. Deconstructing Stigma, which was created by McLean Hospital, is on display. I think it's in the walkway between terminals B and C, possibly between A and B. Alex, by the way, now works at McLean.
Yeah.
And so in addition to that, there's another exhibition that's on display in the international terminal called I Am More. It was created by this small entrepreneurial nonprofit in Maine called the Yellow Tulip Project. And what both of these do is they place faces of regular everyday people literally on floor-to-ceiling panels. And in the case of Deconstructing Stigma, you know, each of the panels tells the story about resilience and recovery in the face of some form of mental illness. And you know, there are a few celebrities or known faces who are sprinkled in to that exhibition. And then I Am More similarly has these beautiful portraits, and by the portraits has statements from each of the people, real people who are, you know, lending themselves to these exhibitions, talking about who they are as people and what their identity is. What is it that, you know, they define themselves by? And they list, you know, it could be I'm an athlete, it could be I'm a mother, and yes, I have depression. And so we see these kinds of exhibitions as, you know, playing a different kind of role, perhaps. You know, maybe they're more in the stigma fighting, you know, role versus where mental health mind matters might be more in mental health literacy. But we see all of these exhibitions in their own way, encouraging more discussion about mental health.
Can I touch upon like what's so good about the exhibits?
Go right ahead.
Well, right, just to let you know, we have about 4.5 minutes.
Oh, see, that's always an issue. We always over talk. All right, I'll keep it short. So something that we love about like exhibitions in terms of creating mental health literacy or like fighting stigma versus like in a classroom, you know, or versus like some sort of program is that it's a very, very voluntary. Like you choose to walk around and you choose your own pace. You choose to like look at what you look at. You choose as to like how much you take it in. And in classrooms, you're kind of forced to read a textbook. It's not really a voluntary experience. And I think there's more judgment in the classroom and less in when you're walking around at exhibitions. I'm not saying that there's always judgment, but you know, you're forced to raise your hands, all that stuff. But in exhibitions, you kind of just get to explore on your own. And almost like, I would say it's an even more emotional experience. Like it's emotional learning. And mental health is emotional. So yeah, I think it's a perfect way to learn about mental health. So I think that's fantastic. And with the exhibitions, like Paul said, like with Logan Airport, I like to say it's in your face.
Yeah.
Like you literally have to walk by it sometimes. Like you have to go from between terminals B to C for, you know, some people have to do that. So they're bound to see it. Not everyone's bound to stop, but it puts it in a place where there's like a lot of public pass by, and I know, I think that's great, especially when it can travel. That's even better.
Mm. Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with a minute,
Anything else you want to share? We have
whatever we have
3 minutes.
left, I think it's also worth recognizing the kind of support we've gotten from Assumption University. We are not supported by them right now as a nonprofit, but certainly getting to this point, we received a fellowship early on that allowed us to develop and do our research into mental health exhibitions. And there were certain individuals at Assumption who really looked at our ideas and believed in them to a point where they supported our research. And that was hugely important to getting us to where we are today. And so we would like to thank again, all of those who have been supportive of the work we've been doing. We have a lot more work to do. And yes, we are looking for partners and collaborators.
Wow. So we have another minute and a half. Do you want to just say your website? How can people contact you? Facebook page?
So our website is www.nmmhproject.org. And we are in the early days, literally just a few weeks into social media presence. And if you go to Instagram, you will find I Get It. Alex, you'll have to help me. I don't use Instagram. How would someone search on Instagram?
Oh, how would they search on Instagram? Oh, if they haven't, they most likely will. But yeah, if you go on Instagram and there's the search bar, you can search I Get It. And then it will be our icon that also shows on our website, which is a green background and a brain.
Interesting. Well, I'm excited for the project that you're doing. I thank you very much for your dedication and commitment to getting this through and up and running. And I'm sure when people look at your website, I looked at your website, it's actually beautiful. It's very educational. It's bright. Has nice colors to it. The exhibits are very educational and your information is really good. So I want to thank Paul Piwko, Professor of Practice at Assumption University, and Alexandra P. Orlandi, psychology major at Assumption University. They are the co-developers of the National Museum of the Mental Health Project. Thank you very much for coming on my show. And I wanted to let you know this is my 22nd year on public access. May 1999 I started, and here we are in May of 2021. I'm on my 22nd anniversary.
Congratulations, Robbin. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
And their information will be up, and you can contact them, and they'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. Well, this is another episode of Miller Chat. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.